Hey there, live like your nail color gals. Are you feeling a little meh right now? Meaning, when you're honest, you're going day to day feeling mediocre, not overly enthused about anything. You may feel like you're living below your potential and often like something's missing from your life. Still, you can't put your finger on it. Today's gal pal, Kari Schwear, will help you put your finger on it. You know, your finger with the nail color, or maybe it's perfectly naked. For Carrie, she got tired of lying to herself and became exhausted from the energy it took to put on the facade that her life was perfect because it wasn't. She got sick of living a double life. That's when she made the change and cracked the code that leads to joy, peace, balance, and everything else that she'd been searching for. Now she helps hundreds of people like you do the same. Before we dive into our conversation, have you taken my quiz to determine your nail color persona? I always ask my guests to share their results before we dive into our conversation because it's just a fun way to get to know them. All you have to do is go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. Answer a few quick questions, and in your results, you'll discover your specific nail color persona, your built-in strengths, and how to tap into those strengths when chip happens. Again, go to livelikeyournailcolor.com/quiz. Now, let's get talking with Kari.
Tired of so much chip happening? Discouraged by so much downer news? Weary from chronic crisis? Don't let the chips keep you down. Welcome to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast, where the tips of your fingers and toes are ready to inspire you to not give up and to keep creating the business, career, and life you want. In each episode, we flip the chip and let our fun nail color with that crazy fun name cheer us on to remember our strengths, embrace the power of choice, see life as an adventure, and know resilience is only a touch-up or change-up away. Get ready for a good time and a good laugh with your host, Mary Foley.
Welcome back, Live Like Your Nail Color gals. Life is too short to live in a continual fog. Do you agree? Well, if so, how do you clear the fog so you can see clearly and get your mojo going so you can start feeling motivated and fulfilled again? Today's gal pal, Kari Schwear, believes it starts with questioning your narrative. You know, the stories you tell yourself between your ears. I've watched Kari transform her own life and create a way to help other high achievers, especially, do the same. She's smart, positive, and fun. And she also dishes out a little bit of tough love. And that's what I love about her. So if every day is feeling like the same endless cycle of emptiness and self-loathing, well, buckle up. You're about to start figuring out how to get out of your own way to experience the personal satisfaction you're craving. Kari, welcome to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Wow, Mary, that was an incredible introduction, I have to say. Probably the best I've ever had. So thank you so much for that lovely
You're welcome. It's
intro.
all truth. Okay. It's all truth. I really do believe this about you. And the thing is, though, your nail color is going to tell you really what the truth is about you, which is why I always ask women who are my guests on the show to say, hey, take my, nail color quiz. What's your nail color persona? And let's find out if it really nailed you, right? Before we get into the other things that we're going to talk about. So I want to start there. You took the quiz. What is your nail color persona?
Oh, wait for it. Practical princess. I love it. When I saw the princess, especially, I was like, yes, thank you. I have my tiara downstairs.
Yes. And even if you're not always wearing it, invisibly we're wearing it. I always like to say I'm invisibly wearing a red cape, wherever we go. So what was it about being a practical princess, the description that really you related to and nailed you?
Yeah. There's something about the sophisticated, classy that really in the descriptive was so spot on for me. I really feel that way. The way that I dress, the way that I present, there is that certain aspect of not taking too many risks. I tend to go with the safer route, if you will, but always with sophistication. And I thought that was really awesome. The practical piece, for sure, when it comes to making certain decisions and making sure that things are a certain way. So yes, it nails me, Mary.
I love it.
For
I love
sure.
it. What about your go-to color of your nail tip? All right. Because it doesn't have to be white. It could be cream. It could be pink. It could be purple for that matter. And that says something about you too. So what is your go-to nail tip color?
Well, because I usually always, does that work in a sentence? Usually always, I
Yeah.
just made it up. Anyway, I usually choose to do a French manicure, wait for it, with a white tip. Why? Because it's practical. It's classy and
Right.
it's
It's super
sophisticated.
practical. Yeah.
It's super practical. It goes
Everything.
with
Right. I know. I
everything.
know. I know. Okay. So here's what a white nail tip or white nail color means. It reveals that you like cleanliness, freshness, and simplicity. You enjoy fresh starts and new beginnings. I found that kind of amazing. And you spark clarity in others. Now, do you think that nailed you?
Yes. That 100% nailed me. That is exactly what I do. And the fresh starts, oh my goodness, I went to 12 different schools in 9 years. I've had 7 careers. Yes, I would say that nailed me
I
quite
love
well.
it. You know what? And
Yes.
you know what I love about having these conversations at the very beginning of every episode with my guest is it's so interesting to find out how much what they choose to put on their nails or not says something about themselves and who they are and how they show up and how they operate. I mean, it's, I always, my joke is always like, you can take these assessments that cost thousands of dollars, okay, maybe hundreds of dollars, or you can just say, hey, let me take Mary's, what's your nail color persona? And I can get right to it really quick.
Yeah, that's funny. That is so true. There is some truth to that. And yeah, I like
Oh,
that.
you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Well, okay, so here's something that is kind of unique about you. You're an expert in being in the state of gray. Now, I know you didn't pick gray for your nail color, but gray isn't so much only just about a color. It's about more of like a being. You say being in the state of gray. I want to make sure we
Yes.
all are kind of starting from the same page because your website's greatonic.com. Great Tonic is a big theme and really a focus in and how you serve others. What do you mean by living in the gray?
Oh, such a good question. And yes, I get asked that quite a bit. So living in a gray, anytime we're in a gray area in our life, and it can mean in multiple areas. It could be in our health. It could be in our relationships. It could be with our behaviors and our habits. It could be in your career. So there's multiple areas in which we could be in the gray area. So the gray area in itself is where you are just kind of existing. You're not living, you're existing. You are feeling the weight of the world, perhaps. Things aren't that bad, but they certainly aren't that good. So you're in complacency. And it can be a very dangerous place to be if not recognized and caught and done something with while you're in the gray. So the gray is an interesting place because it is an opportunity. Everything that I coach on and teach on and talk about is really having a choice. And when we are choosing, and sometimes we do choose to stay in those gray areas because it's comfortable. It's what we know. It's how we cope with it. And we're not willing to take that risk, or we're too afraid to take that risk to better our lives. And it's really having that momentum and having the wherewithal to say, you know what? I don't like where things are right now. And it may be scary, but I'm going to step out and I'm going to do something. And really, it started with my own gray areas. I had plenty of them. My first gray area that kind of really got me into this work was my relationship with alcohol. I didn't identify as an alcoholic. I identified as a gray area drinker. I was not severely abusing, but I was drinking more than socially. It became a problem for me in that aspect. So that was one gray area. I was a gray area in my career at the time. I didn't like what I was doing. I was very unhappy in the job that I was in specifically. And that became a huge gray area. And the other gray area a couple years after that was my marriage, unfortunately. My husband and I have been married over 33 years now, and this was on our 30th year of being married. And I didn't know if I wanted to be married anymore. So we went through quite the journey through that. I'm happy to say things are phenomenal now, but we needed to go through that time. So we have multiple places in our life where we can experience that, where things just feel bleak and they don't seem like they're ever going to get better. And it's just like this big, heavy rain clouds over your head. And, you have the raincoat to put on, but you want some sunshine in your life.
We all really do. We'd rather have, sunshine, but
yeah.
We do need a raincoat and we do need an umbrella because it does rain and otherwise we get wet. And
Absolutely.
I'm wondering, in the last several years, I like to say, or the way I say it is, chip happens in our lives, but man, there's been a whole lot more chip happening around us, and it's caused different stresses in our own personal lives. Are you, with the clients and that you work with, organizational clients, one-on-one clients, are you seeing a trend of more people experiencing this kind of malaise of gray area living and existing?
Yeah. And here's why, is because the weight of the world is upon all of us, right? We have so much noise coming at us. We have distractions, whether it's the news, social media, the war in Ukraine. I mean, whatever is going on and coming out of COVID, of course, it's still there in existence. We have all this stuff, all these big, big issues. And it's so much fear. It's providing fear into someone's heart and to their mind. And if we move into that fear, we move into what I refer to as a protective state, meaning we go inward. And when we do that, when we don't feel good about something in our lives, we tend to want to escape it. We try to numb it out. And this is where we get into trouble. And so this puts us into that gray area where we're ignoring the fact that our job isn't where we want it to be, or our career. We don't feel like we have purpose or meaning anymore. Or maybe it isn't a marriage like with me, or perhaps it is a self-sabotaging behavior. Maybe it's emotionally eating or gaming or gambling, or of course, drinking. In my case, there's multiple ways that we tend to want to cope with that. But the real problem, Mary, isn't all those outside things. It's how we really feel about our lives and ourselves and where we are spiritually and where we feel connected. And that's the heart of what the work that I do is, really diving deep into that self-awareness and realizing that everything that we do is what we believe about ourselves currently. So whatever your identity is currently is showing up in your behaviors. So if you don't like the way things are right now, the answer is not just changing the behaviors. We have to start with the identity first. And who is it that you want to become? Do you want to be that freaked out person that's always worried? Are you that crazy mom who's, struggling and stressed out with the kids and working the job that you don't like and in an unhappy marriage? Those are all choices. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying to get divorced and leave your kids. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is there is an opportunity for you to say, okay, what specifically about these areas of my life are not serving me or that are making me unhappy? And is it really about that, or is it more me? What is it about internally that I'm looking at this? And there's always a reframe. There's always a new choice to make and a new direction, and really focusing on you as a person, because you get to decide who you want to be. You really, really do. And I wish I would have known this earlier. I wish I would have known that we can simply choose. We can simply decide our beliefs just by making a decision. I didn't realize that was such a thing. It's neuroplasticity. We have the opportunity to just decide and then move into that person. So that's really the crux of the work that I do. And especially, habits play a big part of that. Because once you claim that you're the person, for example, I'll give you a quick example. I started smoking, Mary, at age 7.
Gosh.
I had my first cigarette at age 7.
Okay. You're starting early.
Yes. Overachiever. Yeah. No, I figured if you're going to start something like that, you might as well start early. But I declared to my mother, and this is the important part of the story, and I share it publicly because it's really crazy. But I declared at 7, after stealing a cigarette from Gladys, who lived behind us, my mom's best friend, and smoking it and liked it, I came home and said, Mom, I'm going to be a cigarette smoker. Now, why did I do this? Well, number one, this was the 70s. Everyone smoked. Number two, it was a cool cigarette. I wanted to be cool. Come on. But the third reason why is because I was the younger sibling. I was always trying to get attention, and any attention is better than no attention. And so for me to say that I'm going to be a cigarette smoker wasn't so much about that I was a smoker, although that happened for 37 years, but more importantly, that it was stemming off the fact that I believed I was a rebel and I believed that I was a bad kid. And this was a way to prove it. And so therefore I did. And what do you think the cigarette smoking led to? Other stuff, right? It led to me, not hard drugs, but smoking pot early on and making bad choices through high school and into my 20s and 30s. And then that's when the drinking started happening more, was in my 30s. So I claimed this identity for myself, and that drove my behaviors for most of my life. Now, the moment that I decided I'm going to be a non-smoker, I'm going to be a person who doesn't smoke. I'm a non-smoker. And I don't say I'm an ex-smoker. If someone says to me like, did you smoke? I'm like, yeah, I'm a non-smoker. Now I'll go into my story. Yes, I quit smoking. I smoked for 37 years, but I say that I'm a non-smoker. It's just because that's who I am.
Yourself. Now you're identifying, you're saying I'm a non-smoker now. Because ex-smoker is always, really the focus is in the identity of the past. Non-smoker says more, this is who I am now.
That's correct. And same thing with drinking. I'm a non-drinker. I'm a non-drinker and a non-smoker. And so once I claimed that identity for myself, then my behaviors obviously followed. And it's just like if somebody's training to be, my son, for example, he trained in his first bodybuilding competition last year. He had to take on that identity. He took second place overall. He took the identity in his very first show, but he had to claim that for himself because he needed that momentum. And his behaviors matched. It's really hard to compete in a bodybuilding competition. Not only do you have to train, but the amount of food that you have to eat is incredible. I mean, we're talking 6,000, 7,000 calories, and it's not like ice cream, y'all. It's like, tons of chicken and rice and whatever. But then you got to cut down to nothing. And you basically, it's so terrible for your body, by the way. I don't recommend it. But to watch his discipline, because he wanted that title. He wanted to become that person. And this is what happens with basic things in our life. If we think that we're not the best mom, probably not going to be the best mom. Our words matter. Our words matter so much. So we speak life into our own existence. And so this moment that you declare something over your life and you speak it, and then you become it.
I've often said the first hurdle to success and anything is between your ears. And that's basically what you're saying. It's another way, like what you say to yourself about yourself is the beginning for the true change, true shift, true transformation. But it can be as easy. What I find interesting is we go back to choice. Even if we're not aware of the choices we're making a choice. And it has a certain, puts us in a certain framework, a narrative of what we're telling about ourselves, and it has a certain outcome. You could say consequence. It's not, there's just an outcome means because you're thinking this way, therefore you're about yourself, then you're acting this way because of what you're thinking. Well, then those actions, those behaviors have consequences one way or the other, but there's an outcome to them. There's something that happens. So dialing it back, what happens between your ears is so critical. So when we're in a fog, though, and we're in this meh feeling, right? We feel like we're just existing. We're not thinking clearly. What I mean by that, we're not aware oftentimes of what we really are thinking. So what I'm curious is that, particularly when you work with clients, how do you help them get through that, get to more of a state of clarity so that they can make different choices, and then out of that have different behaviors, and out of that have different outcomes?
Oh, well, you summarized it in Mary's way, which I love. So I'm gonna extract some of the things that you said and read tell you how I teach it. So everything we do starts with a belief or a decision. The beliefs are decisions. We get to decide what it is we want to believe. Right. Let's just start with that. And what I mean, this goes back to childhood psychology. If you look at a child from age 0 to 7, Their brains are like sponges. So everything that they're experiencing, they're attaching a meaning to it. So every time they experience something new, then they attach a meaning to that experience, and that becomes a belief. Now, those beliefs can sometimes cause problems later in life, such as beliefs, I'm not good enough, I'm not accepted, I'm not pretty, I'm not tall enough or handsome enough or pretty enough, or it's usually
enough,
something
right,
with the
yeah.
enough, right? Or in my case, I was a rebel, or I'm a bad kid, or whatever it is. And the more times we experience it, the more times our brain says, see, it's true, it's true, it's true. And it becomes thicker. This is a true fact. In our brain, we have myelin sheets in our brain that connect the synaptic connectors in our brain, the neural pathways. And those myelin sheets get thicker and thicker as that same experience happens over and over again. And this is something like, if think of it as hardwired, right? So our beliefs are really driving our show, the inner critic, the unconscious mind. A lot of this is what's driving the show. So if we know that beliefs are decisions, if we look at a wheel and the very top of the circle, we have beliefs. Those beliefs drive our thoughts, what we think about. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. This person doesn't like me. Or let's take a real life example. I hate my job. It sucks, right? And we have to ask ourselves in that moment, is that thought really, really true? Or is there something else that could be true? Well, there's always something else that could be true. And 99.999% of the time, what you're thinking is not true. It's some sort of narrative or altered state of thinking that is causing you to think this way. Those thoughts then create feelings. And those feelings, however we're feeling, and if it's a negative thought, or if it's a thought that doesn't serve you, or something like I just used in that example, not all thoughts are not untrue, but most of them are, especially if you're feeling bad about it, right? So if you feel bad about something, the thoughts are usually not true. So those thoughts, those beliefs create the thoughts then create the feelings. Feelings is what drives action or inaction. So the action that you choose to do in my case was, I hate my job. I'm not good at it. I'm a bitch. Can I say that on here? Sorry if I just cussed on the show.
Because Chip happens even on this episode. Okay.
Chip happens. Chip happens. So, but I was, so I thought I was, right? And so all these thoughts were going through my head, and I came home from work, and the only way that I could deal with these feelings of feeling so terrible, like I'm a disappointment, I'm a terrible boss, I'm not a good leader, whatever the thoughts were going through my head caused me to feel so bad about myself. No one wants to feel bad, right? Who wants to sit with these negative feelings? Nobody. So what do? We either escape it or we chase the feeling. My case, I wanted to escape it. I wanted to get rid of the thoughts. And the easiest way for me to do that was to open a bottle of wine and have a glass of wine before dinner, and then one with dinner, and then one after dinner, right? This was my habit. This was my behavior. This was the action stemming from my feelings, my thoughts. Well, guess what happens when you have an action or an inaction? You have a result, right? Or the consequence. There's something there that shows up for you. And that result, wait for it, reinforces the original belief. And it's this circular thinking pattern that we have in our head over and over and over again. This actually is what causes a lot of people to believe things about themselves that cause the problems in their lives, that create the behaviors that are turning up to be self-sabotaging, or it's not working out for them so well. So this is the pattern. If you don't like something in your life, Mary, all we need to do is change that belief. And what we do is we make a decision about it. So if the belief is not serving you, and it's usually a self-limiting belief, we can decide who it is or what it is we want to be. So if I'm not good enough, it's a belief. Then the new belief is, I am really awesome. And then your brain says that's BS. So now we have some work to do. So now we have to build out evidence to show that we really are awesome. wow, this happened, this happened, this happened. I had this person tell me this, and I'm so loved by my spouse, and my kids love me, whatever the thing is. You want to write the evidence down. And now you have to tell yourself and read this every single day and remind yourself of this new decision so that you now become that person. That's how we start to change our identity. That's part of it. You have to step into the person that you actually want to be.
And writing it down, I love that, because just the process of writing, I have to think about it and think about it. I have to break that thinking cycle momentarily and say, well, what else could be true? What is also, if I am awesome, if I don't feel awesome, well, then what are some awesome things? Like you said, evidence. But going through that exercise, and I put it on paper, and then the repetition of looking at it, I know our minds get into this habit of thinking in a particular pathway. And if we made this groove around the circle, like you've described, and it continues to reinforce, it gets like a muscle, stronger and stronger and stronger. So how do I kind of break out of that? Then you redirect your thinking of what is, I guess, true, that serves you better, to make a different, have different thoughts, feelings, and then behaviors.
Yes. And that's exactly it. Now it sounds a little easy when you just say it like this, and it is work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something you have to be cognizant of. It's full awareness. I mean, you have to have the awareness in there. Awareness, by the way, is probably the number one thing that if more people had self-awareness, they would be able to change so much more in their life. It really comes down to just having someone hold up a mirror for you, which is why coaching is so great, right? Because we hold up mirrors for the blind spots. We all have blind spots. I mean, everyone has a blind spot.
I just want you to know that
I know. You're so perfect, Mare.
That's my
know.
belief.
You're awesome.
Someone's going to say, well, what's also true?
Yes, exactly. But there's something, and I said this before, there's something about words, and words matter. And you've heard affirmations or incantations. I call them power statements. And sometimes our brain wants to go like, oh, this is just BS. This isn't really happening, whatever. But I have made a habit of reciting I am statements, and not even just I am, but like really powerful statements over my life over the past 6 years. And I want to say, if I go back in my journals and I look 6 years ago, or even 10 years ago, of things that I was speaking over my life have come true. And you would never thought they could possibly come true unless I was able to speak those things into existence. And there's something energetically that happens. We actually then start believing it. We are training our unconscious mind that that's who we truly want to be. One example is, 5 years ago, I was like, I want to be a speaker. I want to do a TEDx talk. I want to impact millions of lives. Am I impacting millions of lives? No, but am I impacting maybe thousands? Yeah, probably. I have thousands of followers, right? So is it possible that I'm impacting thousands of lives? Sure. I would like to say yes to that. Have I done a TEDx? Not yet.
Yeah, then not
but
yet.
I will.
Yeah, and before you typically do hundreds of thousands, you do thousands. Before you do thousands, you do hundreds.
Exactly.
Before you do hundreds, you do tens. I mean, it's this whole thing of when you were just saying, about, go back in your journal about 10 years and the things you're speaking over your life and now that are true, it could be easy to interpret that as like, boom, magic dust, they're all true now, like poof. But that's the reality. Is it's a build over time. It was some micro shifts and shifts and then maybe a big, plunge ahead. And that's the work like you're talking about.
It is work. And just so I can give the audience some clarification on that too, it takes on average 18 months for our brains to really build solid neural pathways where we have this new way of being. We can change a habit in 63 days. It's not 21 days. Let me clarify that really quick too, because some people get confused. 21 days is good to establish a habit. And it's hard in those 21 days. The next 21 or 22 days, your brain is going, you know what? You got this thing. You don't really need to do it like consistently, you got it figured out. It's fine. You can go back. It's cool. Like your brain wants to mess with you, right? So you have to stick through that next 21 to 22 days. And then the third cycle is when you start to automate. So that's how long it takes for your brain to actually start automating a habit where it becomes part of who you are. But the whole time you have to be reciting to yourself, like, this is who I'm stepping into being. You have to have that consistency. I call that everyday effort equals expansion. You will get to expanding in your life if you put in the work every single day. And it's consistency that gets us there, right? With anything. And it's doing the right things, the right habits that build you up and edify you and that build, to make you feel really good. And so, some of the big CEOs and executives that I coach, I was shocked to see, and when I first worked with them, hey, what are you doing for a daily routine? Well, I get up and I put the dog out and I make coffee. No, that's not what I mean about a daily routine. What are you doing? Do you work out? Do you exercise? Do you journal? Do you pray? Do you meditate? Do you take cold showers? They're like, wait, what? And none of it, right? So when you start to introduce the habits that actually build people up and makes them start to feel really good about themselves, then it makes it easier to step into that new identity that people want to actually become. So for me, when I decided to quit drinking, that powerful decision to quit drinking, that powerful decision to say, I am going to be a non-drinker. I already quit smoking years ago, but I'm now going to be a non-drinker as well. When I decided to step into that, it was not easy for the first month or two. It took some deliberate work and constant awareness for me to keep down that path of this new identity. Well, guess what? 6+ years later, I don't have to think about it anymore. It is who I am, period. Right? It took about 18 months before I really owned it. Really
that's the
owned
first time
it.
I've heard about the 18 months. I know about the 21, and I knew that was like good starter pack, but and the consistency, that's good because it helps us get an understanding of when you're in it for this longer haul. And we live in a society where we want an instant gratification, and many things are far more instant. But I'm hearing something as a transition, a transformation is, if you want it far more lasting and to stick, you got to put in the time. One of the things that I hear again and again from a lot of women, going back to what's between your ears and starting there and having to sort that out. So there may be a malaise of meh about life, but there also can be, I hear this again and again from women, minds are racing. My mind is racing. It may not feel fulfilled, but my mind is going. Can't let go of this, or I've got other things coming in to, build in fear. You have a method that you call the SABER method. And I would love it if you could give us a quick overview of that, because it's a powerful tool to help stop the crazy spinning between our ears, which has got to be a starter step in order to make some meaningful transformation.
Yeah, thank you. I love the SABER, and I'm going to share how to use it by telling you a story of the origin of SABER, because I think this will help the audience really grasp this. So again, I'm going to go back literally I was alcohol free 18 months. And this is when I was declaring in my head, like, yep, I've moved into this person of being a non-drinker. Doesn't mean that I didn't get tempted. It doesn't mean that I didn't have tough days. It doesn't mean that my mind wasn't racing with all kinds of crazy thoughts, right? As women, especially, we have a lot on our plate. Families, jobs, careers, health, got to look good on top of it too, right? I mean, we're expected to be it all. The maid, the cook, the wife, the mother, the sex goddess for the husband, whatever, right? We got to do it all. And I had a particularly very tough day. I was in a job at this point that I really liked, but I had a really, really stressful day. A lot was going on. There was a lot of, hiccups and, life. Chip happens. So I stopped at Wegmans on my way home to grab some dinner. And again, I'm about 18 months alcohol free at this point. And I walk in to go get some fish for dinner. And as I'm walking back to the fish counter, I see this ginormous wine display of the Chardonnay that I used to drink on a
Oh,
regular
it was
basis.
probably like a beam of light also came down to light up the
It-
womp, womp,
oh,
womp, womp. Look over here, Kari.
yes, it was an incredible trigger for me. So how habits form is really, we have the cues and the triggers that go hand in hand. So this was very much of like the cue. I was already having a bad day. So, setting up the scene here, I'm hungry. I'm a little angry. I'm certainly tired. I'm frustrated. I want to go the heck home. And now I got to stop at this stupid grocery store to get dinner that I got to go make. Okay. So, you get the idea. So I walk in, I see this wine display and I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, I was so angry at the store then. Like my anger shifted to the store. Like, what are they thinking putting this wine display in front of me like this? What are they thinking? Yeah, they're trying to make money, Kari. That's what they were thinking. So what happened? My mouth literally started to water thinking about having this wine. It was the first time in a long time that I actually contemplated saying, screw it, and buying this bottle of wine. So I remember all these thoughts are going through my head at the same time. Like, well, Kari, you don't drink, but screw it. You want to drink just this one time and it'll be okay. And you have all the excuses in the book. And so, I mean, literally, and I'm making it sound like really mild. It was incredible. It was this battlefield in my head of the angel and the devil, like fist fighting and wrestling like crazy with these thoughts. My head was about to explode. Mary, I yelled, stop, out loud.
And there was a mother nearby
stop,
with their child going, over here, Johnny, over
looking
here.
at me like, who is this crazy person? Yeah, right. Like, stay away from this crazy woman. But what happened in that moment, and I didn't realize what I was doing in this moment. I want to, preface that too. But I said stop out loud. And what it did was it gave me space. It gave my brain an immediate break. And it gave me the space I needed to think about what it was I was thinking about. It brought awareness. So we have stop and awareness. It gave me awareness on what I was thinking. That gave me the opportunity to then say and ask myself, do you really want this wine, Kari? Or is this an old pattern that you're now seeing? And this is the reason. And I could see that the thinking was that it was just an old pattern and that I really didn't want the wine. Of course I didn't, because I had worked so hard. There was no way I was going to go back to that. Right. So I had this awareness. I stopped and I acknowledged my thinking by having this awareness. Then naturally, without me even thinking about it, I took a couple deep breaths. Now, when we take deep breaths, what happens in our body, our nervous system, we go into what we call a parasympathetic state of rest and digest. It gives us another moment to really pause. It brings the energy down. It makes us feel more calm when we do that. So I stopped, I acknowledged, I had the awareness, and I breathed. The E in SABER is embrace. Embrace is an important step that sometimes you're going to want to skip over because it involves you to provide grace to yourself. The grace that you need to have for yourself in this moment, and the embrace that I want you to do for yourself, is to know that you're human. I recognize that pattern was something that was my life for many years, and that it was okay that I actually thought those thoughts. It was actually okay. I gave myself permission to be okay with it. I embraced myself in that moment. And then finally, the R was I redirected and refocused and reframed what it was I was actually thinking about. I usually just say redirect or refocus your thinking, but I had to reframe it as well. And I decided at that moment to have gratitude for where I was in my life. I had gratitude that I went through this process in my head without even putting it all together. I didn't know what I was doing in the moment. It wasn't until 2 days later, I'm like, that really worked, whatever I did at the grocery store. And I started thinking about the process, and that's how SABER came to be. I really believe that God gave this to me as a gift. And it's a gift that I give away for free. I always want to share the SABER. And I like to think of the SABER as your own personal weapon to slay your negative thoughts. It's an opportunity to get you out of this negative state that you're in, the one that doesn't serve you, the one that you don't feel good. So if you're in a situation where you don't feel good, and you want to just scream, and you have this inner conflict, this cognitive dissonance that's happening in your mind, break out your SABER. Stop, acknowledge, breathe, embrace, redirect. That's how you use SABER. And it works almost every time. Now, I say almost every time because you may have to sit in the breath. You may have to really sit in that breath for 15, 20 minutes. You may have to journal. You may have to go for a walk to redirect, to find that gratitude. It might take you a little bit longer. And the situation in the grocery store happened pretty quickly, within a minute. You know, you can walk through SABER as little as 30 seconds, or it may take you 30 minutes. It depends on the situation. But I have found, and my clients have found, and everyone that I've shared the SABER with is like, oh my gosh, SABER, SABER, SABER. They use it as a verb. You know, I SABERed through it. Or, you know, I have one client she was so cute. She would send me a message. She's like, SABER, SABER, SABER. I SABEred today like 100 times. I'm like, I don't care how many times you have to use it. Keep using it.
Have that quickly to recall. And that's also, I think, what's powerful about this as an approach and as a tool. We need those so that we can go SABER. Yeah. Okay. Now, what's it stand for again? All right. And then go through the process. And I think we know intuitively when we need to stop, or when I say stop, we need to pause and go deeper on a particular part of the SABER method that we just need more of right then. And I'm sure that your clients, they keep doing it, and they get, I could say, more effective and perhaps faster. But I just had this picture of you walking into the grocery store, going into the seafood department towards that. And then here's this big display, and all that happens. And then it's like slow-mo, stop and awareness. No, and then you were just slow-mo, like, I'm turning away from the display and I'm walking to the case with the fish, you know?
Yes. And I made, you know, and then I still need to get something to drink for dinner. So I had cranberry and club soda, which was my all-time fave. And, you know, I made that powerful decision for myself. But again, I didn't know it in the actual experience at the time. It took a couple of days later for me to put this together. But, you know, if the audience, if you're listening to this and you're like, wow, I really like that, and you're thinking, oh, I'm not going to remember it, just stop, acknowledge, and breathe. If you get through those first 3 steps, that will really help you tremendously. If you can get to the embrace, to give yourself that grace, and to know that you're human. It's a step not to miss. It's a good time to say a prayer. If you're a person of prayer, it's a good time to just get, you know, with yourself and go, you know, gosh, like, it's okay. It's really okay. And then redirect. And the redirect is really moving into gratitude. If you move into gratitude, you immediately shift out of that protective state into more of an expansive state. And that's the whole key, is to move you from this low energy protective state that feels crappy into this powerful, you know, expressive and expansive state where it feels so much better. So that's the whole process that SABER will help you do. And if you use it all the time, you will get much quicker at it. I mean, I still use it. I don't know, maybe not daily, but, you know, I use it pretty often. I mean, things, you know, life happens, happens.
Also, I think there's always another level of growth. And so these tools get applied to those other new levels of growth. And that's also, I think, what makes it really powerful. And I know it's not the only tool you have. You have some, you know, as you coach with people, but that's one I was definitely aware of. And I thought it was just so great. Thank you for sharing it with all the gals that are listening, because those are the things that can start us on the path of changing where we are to where we want to be.
Yeah. And you know what? I feel everyone, because, you know, like I said, shit happens, and we get really tied up in our own world, and it feels like there's so much pressure. And as women, we have this constant chatterbox in our head, and you just want to shut the dang thing up. And the easiest route is to run from it and escape it. And so what I'm asking you to do is not to do that. Be okay with not being okay. Be okay with not being okay. Oh. Let the time, like, use SABER, wait 5-10 minutes before you make a decision. And the other thing I want to say too is that, you know, I mentioned I was hungry, I was angry, and I was tired. That's 3 letters of HALT.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? HALT, for those in the recovery world, I did go to AA. It wasn't a good fit for me. But one thing that I learned from AA was HALT, which is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you ask yourself, are you one of those four things? Are you hungry? Are you angry, lonely, you're tired? Take care of those needs before you do something that you will later regret. Because remember, your actions are coming from the way you feel, and those feelings are coming from the way that you're thinking, and those thinking's coming from a belief.
And there we've come back to the beginning again. And what's the narrative happening between your ears? Wow, this has been so great. I've so enjoyed this. We could keep talking, but we can't because I'm not okay with it continuing on. I'm just kidding. Okay, I'll cut that. Anyway. But
I love you, Mary.
But let's wrap up with a little bit about nail color again. If you could create a name for a nail color to inspire us to, be more aware of what's happening between our ears, what would that name be?
I would say, like AWWW, like 3 W's. Amazing. Amazing. And it would be, listen, I know I'm a classy, sophisticated, practical gal with my French tip nails, but I would want to see amazing in a fiery fuchsia.
And why is that?
Yeah. I don't know why. I see this fiery fuchsia when I think of amazing.
I love it. Amazing. That's you, Kari. All right. So next time, French tip, you're going to have to break away from the white. All right. And put
I might have to do the fuchsia
on. All right. I know it won't go with everything. It's not quite as practical, but I think you can pull it off. So, hey, last thing, for those who want to reach out and connect with you, find out more of what you're up to, what's the best way they can do that?
Well, I'm on all social media channels, of course, usually under Gray Tonic. Gray, by the way. I got to spell it because, here in the States, we're the only country that spells it with an A. Yeah. So Gray Tonic. Yeah, right. But graytonic.com is my website that you can find all the channels there. And
that's great.
A good way to find me.
We'll do. And I'll make sure to put that link in the show notes. And I want to just thank you again for your time. It's been a lot of fun. And I'm looking forward to using the SABER method myself. So thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, Mary. Thanks for having me.
And now for the after party I call Flip the Chip, where I take a few moments to highlight something my gal pal shared that can help us all flip a challenge or a difficulty that's holding us back into something more positive that helps us move forward. What I want to highlight today is Kari's SABER method. It's especially helpful when your mind is racing with thoughts that want to pull you down into that lower energy Kari was talking about. The SABER method is your own personal way to slay your negative thoughts. So here is what SABER stands for. The S stands for stop. Literally, say it out loud, stop. It might feel a little awkward by saying stop out loud, but it gives your brain an immediate break and a space to be aware of what's happening. A stands for acknowledge. With awareness, you can acknowledge your thinking. That's all you got to do. It's right there. And then B. B stands for breath. Take a few deep breaths. This shifts your body into a parasympathetic state of rest and digest, as Kari said. I love that phrase. It's really parasympathetic. It's a fancy phrase for chilling out your heart, your blood vessels, your muscles, and more. E stands for embrace. It's an important step that you might want to skip, but it involves giving yourself grace. Give yourself permission to be human. It's okay. And R stands for redirect. Now it's about refocusing and reframing what you're thinking about, because those thoughts aren't working for you. So needing to replace it with something else. And sometimes you don't know what to replace it with. But one thing you can always do is decide to have gratitude for where you are and that you are in process. You can walk through the SABER method in just a few minutes, or it might take longer. And it's okay if you need to linger on one part or another. The main thing is is to remember it and use it and be kind to yourself to move through where you are to where you want to be. And of course, you can use your nail color to cheer you on by simply putting on a new color and giving it the name Awwwmazing, as Kari suggested, with a whole bunch of W's in there for awe. So that every time you look at your fingers or toes, you're reminded that you can face the negative narrative in your head. You can savor it and remember that, yes, you are amazing. Yep, you can make good choices to create the career, business, and life you want, one step, one nail color at a time. I look forward to being with you next time on the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Live Like Your Nail Color podcast. Ready to live and laugh more? Know a friend who could use some of that too? Then subscribe at liveLikeYourNailColor.com or your favorite podcast app and share this episode right now with the person who popped into your mind. Together, let's flip the chip to be stronger, smarter, and happier.